talk about these specialized cars, even though, yeah, they're trying to, make a car that's, across the board, they can run it anywhere. They still run a special car here for these type of races, Daytona and Talladega, and it's already going to be a costly bill for guys like McMurray, Ty Dillon, Jermaine, Stewart. But ultimately right now, I think the bigger question is coming ahead, looking to, tomorrow, and I'll throw this out to Ty and to Steve. I think we need to have a just finish. We don't need a situation where, contact and an accident determines who wins this race like we did at Daytona a couple months ago. We really need to have a just finish and a finish that is right with the world, I think, right now to get people's eyes more on, the competitive natures of what we like about restrictor plate racing than what we don't like about it. I think that's in the best interest of the sport right now. So being able to get through, and have a clean finish where everyone's getting back to the line, no contact, no accidents, et cetera, I think that's the best thing that could happen looking ahead to Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks for that clip. I actually had it and couldn't find it, so thank you for providing that for us, Matt. Steve, we'll go to you, man. This was a huge wreck, and I know you guys were all over it. Jamie McMurray goes airborne, and now what we're seeing is that NASCAR is changing the size of the restrictor plate to kind of feed off of what Matt was just telling us and help us understand, hey, we got some issues. It could be some possible safety issues with these restrictor plate racing. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, yesterday when this happened, it was estimated that Jamie McMurray was doing somewhere around between 208 and 210. Brian Newman actually was involved in that wreck too, and during his media availability, he did have some words as to the safety and how fast these cars were going out there. In response to what happened yesterday, you're right. NASCAR has reduced the size of the plate down. They've reduced it from 7/8 of an inch to 55/64 of an inch. And this will slow the cars down to somewhere in the 202, 203 range. We've seen in the past that these incidents are and continue to happen. This happens almost every Daytona, almost every Talladega, and this is why they're some of the most popular races that people still continue to come to day in and day out outside of the short tracks. These wrecks, these high-speed, maneuvering in and out of 3 and 4 and 5 wide in some of these corners and down the straightaways, it's very popular among people. And, unfortunately from the other side of the aspect is that, yes, there's going to be accidents. Yes, there's going to be people or cars getting up into the air. And, NASCAR has tried everything they can do, from putting, air containers in the front of the car around the hood to try and move the air in different directions and move the air from outside of the car in the cockpit and make it flow through so it'll keep on the air. They put fins on the tops and backs of the cars. All these have been safety measures over the years that they've continued to do to keep these cars on the ground. But, I always like to say if it can happen in racing, it will happen in racing. And, we saw it yesterday. There were some very fast speeds, as I already said. Going forward, however, though, for tomorrow and today, there's still going to be a lot of competitiveness, so you're going to see a lot of these wrecks continue to occur just because of how close that these run together. The last time we ran caution-free at one of these events has been many, many years, and, I don't think that you're going to see that. Just the competitive nature. You've got the Dash for Cash, $100,000 today. And then tomorrow, obviously, with the Geico 500 there, is going to continue to be just as competitive week in and week out that we've continued to see at some of these races. And as far as, we coming back to green, getting a checker flag, I'd like to be optimistic in this fact, but, that's typically, when the heat starts to pick up and we start to get into these multi-car incidents.
You look ahead, Steve, to that situation. Steve, with the situation that happened yesterday, are we going to start seeing, with the rule change, we're going to start seeing maybe stricter enforcement, like, for instance, the no-fly zones with the out-of-bounds line? We used to see situations where guys, if they went below the line barely, they get penalized. Could we possibly see scenarios where if you just touch it or graze it, that there could be a penalty enforced because of that, because NASCAR is trying to limit these kind of accidents?
I think NASCAR in those situations it's a double-edged sword in the fact that, they do have cameras, they do have TV, they do have officials all the way around the track. And, unfortunately, they don't catch everything out there, just as in any sport, they don't catch anything and everything that it continues to occur. If I have to say that they're going to be extremely strict on this, I think that they're going to play this the same way that they've played it in the past. If people are getting aggressive, if people are putting people below the line, pushing them below the line, then they could draw the penalty themselves and not necessarily the person that, went below the line. I think they're going to enforce these in the ways that they've done in the past, and I think if it does get to a point where it is aggressive, and we've seen aggressive racing at some of these events, I think then that's when we'll start seeing the more, not as clear-cut penalties, but this is more of a safety factor penalty, getting these people off the track before, something does occur.
Ty, your take?
We're talking with Steve Wilson. I'm sorry, Matt. We're talking with Steve Wilson of Speedway Digest, Matthew Embry of Popular Open Wheel, and also Tyson Lautenschlager of onpitroad.com. I'll get it straight. Tyson, a little fun today with Xfinity race. The Cup drivers will be doing the broadcast. How fun is that? Talk with us a little bit about today's Xfinity race, sir.
Yeah, the drivers only broadcast that Fox does once a year is always fun, and I think the fans always enjoy that. But we should be in, as Steve put it, we should be in for a really good race. It is a dash for cash race, which means there's going to be 4 guys going for $100,000, and they're trying to lock in their spot to race for $100,000 again next week at Dover. And we have no Cup drivers in the field, which is something that the fans are always pleading for. The last few weeks that we've seen these dash for cash races, we've seen sort of unusually good racing out of the Xfinity Series. We don't see a lot of good racing up towards the front, solely because we do have a lot of those Cup drivers in the field, and they kind of take the spotlight from the Xfinity guys, but we don't have that, which could make for a really entertaining race, a really exciting race, and it could also make for a really crash-filled race, which a lot of fans do like to see. I'm hoping, we had the airborne incident yesterday, and I'm hoping we see all cars stay on the ground today. But we do have, as we talked about previously, NASCAR did reduce the restrictor plates on the cars, which should slow them down a bit. And I remember just a few weeks ago we were on the balance and we were talking about Indy Car and the cars getting faster, and we were talking about you don't need high speeds for a good race, and I'm hoping that continues to be proven, because we don't need these cars going upwards of 215 to have a good race, and we can go 200 miles an hour and still have a good race at Talladega. So I'm hoping the reduction of this restrictor plate proves that today. As for Matt was talking about the yellow line rule, and basically the rule is if 2 wheels go below the yellow line and you advance your position, that's an automatic penalty, and that's usually the only, well, it should be an automatic penalty as long as NASCAR deems that you weren't forced below the yellow line. And that's kind of how the rule works, so I don't think we'll see anyone, graze that yellow line and NASCAR automatically calls a penalty, because in the rule book it clearly states you have to have 2 wheels below the line and advance your position. Basically, it is kind of a NASCAR gray area, and they decide, they pick and choose when they're going to enforce that rule, but it should only be when you're advancing your position below the line.
Steve, let's get with you, and we want to make sure that we get a full preview of tomorrow's race. And as we've talked about already today, and Talladega is known for it, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the big one happens. Talk with us a little bit about what you think about the big one. I think a lot of fans love to see the big one. Let's admit that. Of course, we don't want anybody hurt, but we would love to see the big one. But certainly it's catastrophic for race teams. Talk with us a little bit about tomorrow's Monster Energy race down in Talladega. Who to look for, the dark horses, the X's and the O's. Break down Talladega 2018.
I think you just have to continue of the dominance in the past over several seasons or so with Ford Performance and the cars and the engines that they're bringing. I mean, there's a lot of people in that stable that that can win. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. won multiple times on restricted plates last year. Joe Logano Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski. I mean, over at Penske Racing, Ryan Blaney has shown a lot of speed on these restrictor plate style races when he was with Wood Brothers Racing. Showed a lot of speed there in Daytona also. It just, that camp and those people that, putting together not only the cars but the engines, have picked something up on the restrictor plates over the years, and they continue their dominance. I don't think that outside of that, you've got to be very selective in the fact of who you're looking at. Martin Truex Jr. has been, one of these guys that can kind of do it, but, has not been, as he's not been, at the top of the field, the cream of the crop, like we see him on the 1.5 mile tracks. Richard Childress Racing, they've got Austin Dillon that's already won this year, but whether he can come back and he can back that up with another restrictor plate win, I'm kind of, sitting on the fence. I don't think that he can do it. I think that he's going to need some more speed. I think he's going to need some more experience in these events. Then, with Joe Gibbs Racing, again, with those guys, they've not performed very well in any traditional manner or, any consistency. And lastly, when we start talking about Jimmy Johnson, he is definitely not a fan or in favor with these restrictor plate tracks. He's wrecked out of pretty much every single one over of the last 3 or 4 seasons with very little luck. So don't look for him to come to the front. Don't look for him to make but so many moves throughout the race. I think for him it's going to be about maintaining because, right now he's already in a fight. It is staying at stop 16 to get into the playoffs later this year. So I would not foresee him trying to make any bold moves today or tomorrow. Sorry.
All right, guys, let's go around the panel here and get our final words of wisdom on either Indy Car or NASCAR, whatever you got to add. We'll start with you, Matthew Embry, our official Indy Car contributor. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Embry. Matt, what say you, sir?
I'll be curious to see today and tomorrow how many laggers are going to be at the back just trying to stay out of trouble, keep their nose clean, because that may be the way to win this. If it gets wild as we think it might today in the Xfinity race with all these, inexperienced drivers, that might be the way to go, and it may be the way to go in Cup, because I think if, X's take out majority of the contenders, it may not be, the best idea to try to win those segments, because if guys are going to drive aggressively at the end of each segment, we have the possibility of a big wreck, possibly as many as 3 times tomorrow. So you may be better off, just saving your ammunition for the end of it when, there's limited cars left and maybe a bunch of walking wounded, and that may be the way to win the race. Now, as far as winning the race, I think one guy you got to look at has got to be Ricky Stenhouse, in my opinion.
Tyson Lautenschlager of OnPitRoad.com, our favorite Canadian columnist from north of the border there. And also, real quickly, want to give our thoughts and prayers. I know that you guys had an incident up there in Toronto this week, and so our thoughts and prayers go to Canada as well. Wanted to make sure I got that out for you, and certainly feel free to comment on that if you want to. Tyson, you can find him at Tyson Lot 23. Tyson, what say you, sir?
Yeah, thank you. So I think this is going to definitely be a Ford weekend, just as Steve was saying. If you look at the every restrictor plate race last year, you had a Ford winning. You had Kurt Busch in the Daytona 500, the Talladega in the spring and July Daytona. Ricky Stenhouse won both of those, and Brad Keselowski winning in the fall. Ford just seems to have the engine package and the aerodynamics package figured out at these plate tracks. Even going back to the 500 this year, we had Eric Almirola was half a lap away from winning. Ryan Blaney pretty much dominated that race. These Fords have it figured out, and they're probably going to dominate again and be there at the end. But the great thing about restrictor plate racing is anything can happen. Anyone can get there. If you're there at the end, you have a chance of winning. So really, it can go either way. One thing I was interested in when Steve had commented on this is the Joe Gibbs cars. They typically don't perform all that well at the plate tracks, but what they do have going for them is they work together like none other. Those Toyotas will stick together and run together for basically the whole race, and sometimes that can really bite them in the butt, but sometimes it could really pay off, and I think we should look for that this weekend, see if those Toyotas continue to do that, stay together, and maybe they can make it to the front at the end of the race. As for a winner pick this weekend, I'm going with basically anyone that's in the field because we know anything can happen.
It could be anybody. Absolutely. Go ahead, Tyson. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, buddy.
No, that's basically it. But thank you for letting me address the Torontoans. And I live about